He's joining us from Texas, found us on Meetup.
Okay.
Oh, wow, okay. Welcome.
So for those of you who are new to us,
somebody in Long Beach. Okay.
we're at chapter 11. We're going through the book Being Time, which
What,
is
chapter 11?
chapter 11, yes.
We're
Uh-oh.
going out of business?
Yeah.
Oh no.
That the last chapter?
Last chapter.
No, it's not the last chapter.
Oh, okay.
This is a practitioner's guide to Shobogenzo, to Dogen's Uji by Shinshu Robert, who is out of the San Francisco Zen Center of Tradition. And the chapter is entitled, What is Today's Time?
What's that?
So Dogen Zenji writes,
Somebody's playing basketball against the outside.
oh, is that what that is? It
Sounds like it to
Oh,
me.
somebody, yeah, it sounds like somebody was
Are they banging against the glass, the stained glass thing?
Yeah, we could see a shadow behind them when we heard the noise.
Okay.
Go check it out.
We may have some issues going on outside, so we'll check it out. Morning, David. All right, Dogen writes, the creature with 3 heads and 8 arms is yesterday's time. The 16-foot Buddha is today's time. Nonetheless, the nature of the truth of this yesterday and today lies in the time when you go directly into the mountains and look at the myriad peaks around you. Hence, there is no passing away. So even that 3-headed, 8-armed creature makes a passage as my being time. Although it might seem as if there were somewhere else far away, it is the time right now. The 16-foot Buddha body also makes a passage as my being time. Although it might seem as if it were somewhere else over there, it is the time right now. So it's and basically what Dogen is very carefully deconstructing is our delusion about sequential time, and as it relates to our practice, that we're sequentially going from delusional to enlightenment. And he basically says that's not at all the case. And the Buddha said it, when he realized his own enlightenment, all beings have. It's not all beings will get, or maybe have, or some have it and some don't. It is all beings have the wisdom of the Tathagata. So this is, and this is it's also multidimensional in that. It's that it's all beings and all, in all time, have the wisdom of the Tathagata. So we tend to use this time, we tend to weaponize it. Meaning that we have some encounter with somebody, in the book they talk about an argument with a sibling, and you stay stuck with that idea of that argument. And so the next time you see that person, you're still in that past experience of that person. Now, who knows, and we don't know what was going on with that person at the time that we had the argument, and we know even less of what where they have changed or how much they have changed. But we still approach it as if that argument is present. Because the only place that we think about the past is in the present, and the only place that we think about the future is in the present. So there is no passing away, if you will, of that sort of thing. And this delusional, this 8-armed, 3-headed with 8 arms, so-called delusion, is equally as present now as the 16-foot Buddha is that we think we're going to attain at some point in the future. We sit because we are enlightened, not to get enlightened. It's already there. You don't have to obtain it. There's nothing to obtain. So you have this all in this time, in this being, in time, being time. So it's, and he phrases this, I've always, why does he keep saying this being time? It drives me crazy. this title, because he's really, just in the title itself, he's deconstructing this idea of time being someplace else other than our being. So it's not that we're being in time or out of time or going to be or on time. It is, we are the coalescence of time itself, right here, right now, and not separate from that time. This going into the mountains is, a kind of a traditional way of expressing where we go to experience enlightenment. Because from the peak of the mountain, I mean, we've all been, you've gone to some peak and you've worked hard to get there. You had to take some time off from work and travel to the mountains and then get out of your car and actually hike, because the car wouldn't get there. And you fought the good fight to get up that mountain, and then you get to the peak and you look around and everything is just there. It's there, and it's huge, and it's just immense and infinite. And from everywhere you can see, it's like you can see the entire universe from that spot on the mountain. And you have this, not only do you have this idea of the immensity of the world that you're in, but you have this idea of how very small we are in comparison to that immensity. Those comparisons come up, and then you realize, I am this immensity. I'm not separate from it. This immensity is me. Who's the poet? You'll know this quote, I am multitudes. Quick.
Yeah. The Civil War poet.
Walt Whitman.
Well, thank you. Well, wait. Okay, gold star. Gold star to Mike. Remember the poet's name. We are multitudes, we are mountains, we are this one with everything. And that standing on the top of the mountain, standing at the peak of the mountain, gives us that vantage point. But it's a vantage point that we always have. We are always, even when we're not on the mountain, we are still these multitudes, still this immensity, still this spaciousness. And delusion is not separate from this being time, not separate from who we are and what we need to be. And I love she quotes the story of the Vimalakirti Sutra, in which these bodhisattvas from this, what was it called? This world of, the land of the host of fragrances. And if you want, if you want to read some really fascinating stories, and they're just bizarre at times, just read some of the stories in some of the sutras. They're just craziness. But the allegory is really very good. These beings come from this perfect world, and they come down and they're looking at human beings. They're thinking, what a mess. How can you people ever become enlightened? And very quickly, because their land is so perfect, they don't have to worry about it. They already have this oneness, this immensity. But the story goes on to say that how stuck they are, because they have no difficulties, no delusions, no challenges, no hindrances, nothing to overcome, nothing to get any better than they already are. Whereas we have this infinite possibility of constantly growing and becoming, because we have all of these delusions, or these delusions and the effects of these delusions that we have to experience and overcome. The grain of sand that gets into the oyster shell, which is very uncomfortable, and so the oyster shell turns that challenge into something very beautiful. The lotus flower that really needs the muck and the mud of the water in order to become that very beautiful flower that sits on top and looks as if it were, this essence of purity and wonder, but it's grounded in the muck, grounded in the garbage, if you will, that is down at the base, in which its roots are thriving, and that's what we have. We have the muck. Every day we get up and we face the muck and we deal with the muck, and we have all kinds of choices of how to respond to that, of how to grow in that, how to thrive in that. And all of this happens in the present moment, in this eternal now that she references. And it includes those things that we call enlightenment, those so-called delusional things. But those are just names that we call them. It's all perfect. And it's cliche, perfect just as it is. We hear that all the time. We're like, some of these things are less perfect than others. But are they? They are what they are.
Yeah, I like this quote from Cicero. It says, "We don't live in Plato's Republic, we live in the scum of Romulus." Plato's Republic was definitely this utopia that he wanted to create, but no. And oftentimes in trying to create these so-called utopias, we destroy something, or we exclude something, or we try to imagine that this utopia is without that, so therefore how do we keep that away from our utopia? If we recognize that what we are in right now is this utopia, we're using this to become the 16-foot Buddha that we so-called are trying to attain. It's already there. It's rooted in this hot mess that we deal with every day. This is the fertilizer, if you will, of what makes a bodhisattva. Because it doesn't happen anyplace other than right here, right now, in the mess that it is, or in the privilege that we have. I mean, look at this space. If this is not the essence of privilege, I don't know what is. This beautiful building, the time that we have to spend together, the glorious weather today. How could we not enjoy this? But at any moment, I don't want to jinx anything. All of this could be leveled under the next earthquake that hits Los Angeles. Then we would have that in which we then get to be the bodhisattvas. There'll be lots of saving that needs to be going on should that tragedy happen. And these tragedies are happening all over the world all the time, and they always have. So we always have to take care of reality just as it is. Even though the war isn't here, the war is happening someplace. Even though we on the West Coast enjoy, especially in Los Angeles, this very liberal acceptance of all kinds of differences and diversity, that is not the case in many parts of the country. Then we need to, from where we are, we need to take care of that. So we know that the world is this hot mess, and we're challenged with all of these things that need to be taken care of. And that isn't happening some other time, or we'll get better in some other future. It isn't really happening in some other place. It's happening right here, right now, with us, not even in this time, being time. So here it is. Here's your life. And this is what practice is all about, is how to live your life. And it's not even that, because you're already living your life. It's recognizing the life that you're living. Then you get to make choices. The rules are cease from evil, do good for others. Those are the three. That's what the three precepts start with those rules. And so this ceasing is what we do. We sit. We quiet our minds. We focus on our breath. And when we're doing that, we're not messing things up for the most part. We're sitting still and letting the 10,000 dharmas in because we're so busy that we're trying to get things out of our way. You know, the traffic is in my way. I'm late again. So it's this constant, rat race that we're always in. But every so often, once a day, I recommend, sit, shut up, and breathe. Yeah.
Well, Wayu, I mean, I'd be curious to know, your definition. We say everything is perfect, perfectly imperfect just the way it is. If we say that, and then out of the same breath we say, cease from evil, can you contrast those two? What would you define then as evil in contrast that everything is perfectly imperfect?
So, evil is, I think in Buddhist terms, is that which causes suffering. And then to take it out of other, because we want other suffering, that someone else is causing that suffering. Suffering is happening someplace else. The Buddha went further with saying life is suffering. There's no separation in that sentence. It's just what life is. We have the opportunity then to save people from that suffering, or in that suffering, or as that suffering is happening. And that's what the practice is. And we have to start with ourselves. Because we put your own oxygen mask on first if you are to assist others to breathe. If you're not saving yourself, you can't save anybody else. So the ceasing from evil is it's life. Life is suffering. So ceasing from really continuing to contribute to that evil is sitting. But it's always, unfortunately, it's in retrospect that we recognize how important some of the challenges are. We probably would not have made the advances that we have as humanity had we not had these challenges, had we not, demonstrated how really awful we could be. Because then we realize, okay, there were some other choices that we could have and should have made, but we didn't. So how now do we do better in the future? So I don't like the word perfect because it sounds like a static state. I think everything is always perfecting. We're constantly getting better, constantly working to make better choices. So that's the work of humanity. We've always been a mess. The technology gets better, not human beings, not so much. So we have this constant opportunity to really look at ourselves. Just to think of it in kind of a small way. When I hear the news about the microplastics in the ocean, I look around my house to see how is it I'm contributing to that horrible state, because that didn't happen overnight. This has been happening for a long time, and it was difficult for me to turn around in my house and not find a whole lot of plastic. That in remembering a whole lot of other plastic that I've probably thrown away and not recycled, And plastic is very difficult to recycle, so a lot of it doesn't get recycled. So now what do? So how do I cease from the evil of contributing to the microplastics in the ocean? Just a small example. How do I cease from contributing to a system that excludes people on the basis of ethnicity, race, color, gender identity, sexual orientation? How do I recognize and see myself in all of that diversity and include it? That's not an easy thing to do. And then I have to think, and I've said this before, how do I include those things that I disagree with? How do I make a safe place for the racists to express themselves so that I can better understand where they're coming from and why they feel the need to separate on that level? Because if I don't understand it, how can I help? How can I do anything about that if I don't know? If I just say, okay, I want to include everybody, but not them. How is that different from what they do? So there's every opportunity. There's so many opportunities. It's overwhelming, how many opportunities we have to cease from evil. So many opportunities to recognize that it's that evil, that so-called evil, those stories that we think are evil, they contribute to my becoming better on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis. There's no end to that. So those things are not comparable or contrasting. They're happening simultaneously. They all arise together because they're not separate. Because there's nothing in the universe that's separate. So trying to other it is where we get into trouble. But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to include everything, because invariably you're going to run into a wall of some you don't like, some that doesn't make sense, that's something you just think should end, that you're going to have difficulty including. And that's where the practice really comes to bear. Is okay. Here's this seems to be a limit to me. So, but is it? Can I see myself in this horribleness that I'm now facing, and then heal it? Do
Yeah,
good.
can you include it
do
without
good for
allowing
others.
it though? I mean,
Say again?
can you include it without allowing it? I mean, at some point you have to make a decision to not let this
Yeah.
happen. I mean, if you see somebody beating someone,
Yeah,
you include it.
yeah. But you don't do it.
Right, you don't do it. But
Yeah.
Well,
But you step in and not do it.
yeah, the famous philosopher Hannah Arendt, she studied the Nazis, and one of the things that they came to understand, especially in Germany and France, is that when you allow intolerant people to express and take over, they'll take over because they won't allow your tolerance anymore.
Yeah.
So you can't always say, oh, let everybody do whatever they want and we'll come to this nice little understanding and we'll live. That doesn't work that way. And another example is like, skinheads a lot of times like to take over establishments.
Mm-hmm.
And you let one in, they see that the bartender's accepting of that. So then they start bringing in more and more groups, and they take over and make that their establishment, and then they can't get rid of them anymore because they'll trash the place.
Yeah.
So the thing is once one guy expresses himself and makes them known, the guy bouncer kicks him out right away without asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a limit to tolerance, and there's good reasons why France and Germany have the anti-Nazi laws.
Mm-hmm.
And here we've allowed, because of our history in the South, we've allowed blatant racists to, especially in the last 4 years, almost take over the country. So,
So I'm agreeing with including but not allowing. I think that there have to be boundaries.
And I think including in this situation means acknowledging, recognizing, not turning away.
Right.
Not turning away at blind eye, but actually staring at it and seeing it,
And recognizing it for the
the
evil that it is. Because it's not, the rule is cease from evil, not allowing evil. But you have to see it. And yeah, I think that's right. If you recognize that there is something coming into your space, I think we can't be, I don't think this practice is about being cavalier about everything. I think it is a call to action, because it's only in this, including that because you can't, what you can only see in someone else what you see inside yourself, because we're always projecting. If you don't have it within yourself, then you can't see it out there. If you don't have the capacity of separating and segregating on the basis of race, you're not going to recognize the danger of racism. But we all, and I say that to a group of people, and because they just finished saying I'm not racist. I'm going, well, but you're living in a country that's segregated on the basis of race, so you recognize that, because it is, and we have all experienced what that's like. But even if we're not the ones being excluded, we feel what it feels like to be excluded. So we recognize those different aspects of it, and we make a choice. This I can't. I'm not going to allow myself to do this. I'm not going to allow. I don't want to live in a place where this is allowed. But I'm here right now. Do I take a stand? Then you have to decide what you
Being
do.
aware of your own privileges too.
Yes.
I spent last week in Florida.
Oh dear.
Oh my.
It's very different than here.
Nice entities.
One of the things I did was visit a friend that I lived with overseas in college. She's Jewish, and she asked me about our governor, and we chatted, and I asked about her governor. She loves him. And I said, why? He's been great for Florida. We never closed up. We didn't have to wear masks, and she's gone full MAGA. She wants me to come back again in the fall when I'm there, and I'm debating, gosh, do I even want to be with someone? Do I want to be in proximity with someone who's so that way, Is that supporting it?
Yeah.
How can you live in Florida and not be accepting of that? I mean, she's still there. She hasn't moved out. So,
Yeah.
She moved back, yeah.
so
Well,
that's what Florida is like.
well, you don't have to go to Florida to find MAGA.
They go to Orange County.
Orange County.
Kid Beach.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
My neighbor just around the corner has this gigantic flagpole, and he has all the flags that are associated with MAGA, and I think QAnon, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. What you were saying before, or Ginger Roshi was saying about there's Donald Trump, we separate ourselves from Donald Trump, yet at the same time, there's a Donald Trump within us as well.
Yeah.
So we kind of got to recognize that when we're dealing with other people,
Yeah.
and that we have a darker side to ourselves. It's not the other,
Yeah.
we have the darker side, but how do we deal with that aspect of ourselves?
Well, you don't have to call it light or dark. Who is it that you don't want to be around? That's you being exclusionary. So that's the same. It's the same
Yeah.
energy.
In my practice, I'm not completely exclusionary. A lot of my good friends are, Republicans or Trump supporters.
You know what that sounds like? My best
And
friend's
I
black.
talk to them and
Yeah.
stuff, and I say, Well, the Democrats have screwed up too, you know.
But there's some
And things are better,
substance,
maybe even under Trump in some respects. I don't
there's
know.
some substance to certain preferences, like maybe political ideology.
Yeah.
But when it's just skin color, when it's just sexual orientation, that is like such a surface discrimination that I don't know
Yeah.
what to do about that. But you know, we're all going to have preferences. I'm not going to hang out with everybody, right? I'm going to hang out with people I like or have interests, but I'm not going to judge them based on something so superficial.
Right.
And that superficiality, I think, is the problem. I mean,
But I think what's
Yeah.
important about that is that you recognize that you can, because, and you've made a choice not to do that. That's the perfecting part of this. We recognize the violence that we have within us and choose not to act out on it. You know, if we don't recognize that, if we don't include and not allow, then we can't see it out there. You know, this projection, what we're saying about these other people are coming through our own biases. They're not out there. It's all here. It's all right here, right now, this time being. It's not even back then or in the future. Because the only place we're thinking about that, the only place we're recognizing it, and the only place we're doing anything about it is right here, right now. So that's the practice, is being present. Being present with humanity, all of humanity, just as it is in this moment. And that means we make choices. Because the next, first we do the ceasing. We stop from doing anything, you know, then we do good. There's an obvious distinction there. And the good, I think, is that when Buddhism talks about good and bad, we're really talking about alignment. You know, alignment with reality. What is aligned with what will benefit humanity? You know, with reality. Because usually these superficial judgments are baseless. Number one. Those of us who know people of all these this diversity know that these people are just people, and those distinctions that we make have no basis or bearing at all on the fullness of their humanity. They're fully human. They're fully acceptable. And even those people who have those ideas are still fully human. So, and deserving of being cared for. Do we allow their exclusionary behavior to continue? I think not, but we still take care of them as human beings. So we don't, you know, I worked in hospitals my entire life. Pretty soon I will not be able to claim that I do anymore, and I'm looking forward to that. And we don't make those distinctions when they roll into the emergency room. Skinhead rolls into the emergency room. We take care of it. We take care of their wounds. We take care of their injuries. Do we allow them to post a Confederate flag on the door and continue with their exclusionary practices while at the hospital? The answer is no. But we still take care of them. So that's the Bodhisattva compassion, is that we see them as the human beings that they are. And we recognize these layers and levels of discrimination, of delusion within ourselves, because enlightenment is being aware of that delusion. It doesn't get rid of the delusion, it just makes us aware of it. And we get to make choices about what we do with those delusions. And those layers of delusions, you know, I did some interviews this past week, and those of us who've studied unconscious bias know that we have, and you don't recognize what it is all the time, but you recognize it when you're being triggered. And so, and I recognized this one of the applicants, we interviewed her via Teams, which is like Zoom. It's Microsoft's version of Zoom. And I immediately knew that, she came on the screen and I was like, why don't I like her? She hadn't said a word, hadn't opened her mouth. And I was like, okay, unconscious bias being triggered right now. What do I do? And I've got to figure, because you can't really stop it, you have to sabotage it some way. You have to stop yourself from making a decision based on that. But I recognized the trigger. And it took me a few minutes to figure it out. And it was basically the Botox. Her face wasn't moving.
Oh.
Wasn't a bad connection.
So, and I think it's because she didn't smile. And then when she tried to smile, this moved, nothing else moved on her face. Oh, okay. Let me not look at her face, just listen to what she has to say. To see if this is a good applicant. But those distinctions, those prejudices are still there, despite the fact that I have worked very hard not to have them. They still show up, and I get to work on that. Nice person, was a good applicant. She wasn't the one we chose. She would have been the second one, and we all said that. And I admitted it to the panel. I said, had to get past the Botox, but it was just an interesting idea. But because for a few seconds there, I couldn't hear her. I couldn't listen to what she was saying.
What is that called? The uncanny, what is it? The uncanny valley. Yeah,
It's called what? I'm sorry, I missed it.
uncanny valley.
Valley, when something is too human-like, then it becomes unnerving.
Oh.
But it's a mismatch. It's
Yeah.
like there's
Uncanny Valley?
uncanny valley.
Ah, interesting.
I've never heard of that.
Uncanny Valley, yeah. TV show.
Any comments from the Zoom?
That looks
Tao, David,
totally
Kurt.
human. It's
Is that
totally
a new
pretty.
AI thing or something?
Well, AI triggers that sense of the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
You recognize a human, but you know there's something.
Being open to that which immediately you reject is a real challenge. I appreciate your job because you got to get beyond that. Being retired, I can only gather things around me which I enjoy. So I wish you well in yours.
Thank you, David. So I'll have to work on not doing that in my retirement. But I am definitely looking forward to being retired. But yeah, it shows up and sneaks in, and I'm very happy that I've done the work to all those what are those things we go through for unconscious bias, those little quizzes that we take. There were like 17 of them or something like that. So I'm glad I did that because it was like I recognized the trigger. I couldn't figure out what it was at first, and this is how this shows up for us. And I'm sure that it's a little bit tribalistic on some level. You see something different and you other it, and then you have all kinds of stories that come up about it, even though you know absolutely nothing about the person that you're projecting that onto. That's just how insidious that prejudice is, and we don't bother to cross the divide that we've now created to say, hi, how are you? Who are you? And figure out who that is. And I think that's what we have to do is cross the divide.
Yeah, well, I wonder what that experience really would be like, and I say it because like when we have this idea of like, we don't see the mountain, we are the mountain, we don't see the other person, we are the other person, and there is no othering in that place. So what does that feel like to be that other person that you don't like, that you recognize is still you, not in a sort of a mental way, but in a sort of a direct experience way, and And then, you know, and just never had that experience to really know, like, what is that like, you know? Like, when you're in nature, you connect with everything in nature, it's usually pretty positive. You know, because you feel like, oh, I'm part of the sky, I'm part of the clouds, I'm part of the deer, I'm part of the, you know, and that's quite beautiful. But then if you find the hunter coming down, so when you want to shoot Bambi, and you're like, oh, I'm the hunter, and all of a sudden, it's a different kind of experience that you're now fully taking in, and there's no separation. So,
Or if there's the mountain lion walks up to you,
that's true.
and you're about to eat dinner.
Yeah, you're bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That poem Nick, the poem,
Take that on.
yeah, how he contrasted, all the different things, the child and the pirate, and
Yeah.
mayfly and the bird.
What's the call?
Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh's Please Call Me By My True Name.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah, we did a whole series on talking about the different aspects of that poem. I highly recommend it. So it's just the modern version of passing notes in class.
Yeah, it is.
But I will add maybe one thing, I remember having this dream a long time ago where I had this, white snake, and I was I was really scared of this white snake. And then somehow in that dream I said, well, what if I am the white snake? Am I afraid of myself? And then, when I made that shift in my consciousness where I now thought I was the white snake, the fear went away.
Yeah.
Because I'm not othering it anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe if the mountain lion came out and I was truly not othering it, I would be like, well, I'm the lion and I'm me, and if he's hungry, I guess that's okay, because I'm still the lion too, and I need to eat.
Yeah,
So
No more other.
no
Well,
other.
there is
You will be one with him. You'll be one with you.
There's one of the Jataka tales. The Jataka tales are the stories about the Buddha's past lives when he was, an animal. One of the characters in the Jataka tale recognized a hungry lion or lioness and decided to become that lion's food out of compassion. So a little extreme
Not there yet.
in my experience. Yeah, I don't know that I'd be quite that compassionate.
Yeah, start with a mosquito and see if you can be the mosquito, and go from there.
That's why my friend wants me to come back. She wants to rescue me from my poor thinking in
Yeah.
California. So I'll be like her, MAGA.
She's trying to save you
Yeah.
from your bleeding heart liberal. And you hear people, praising DeSantis for what he's done, and it's hard for I don't know the full story, and I have to stop myself because certainly that comes up for me. I'm like, I don't know this man. I really don't know the politics. I hear snippets of the news and who I understand is being excluded by his politics. So I've made judgments. Can I stop long enough to listen? And certainly, connecting with a human being on the human level, human beings are much the same, and all the animals were really much the same. What we do and the stories we tell are something else. I mean, that's a layer. That's the delusion that gets layered onto our humanity. It's not the humanity itself. So they're still human. Still, get up and put their pants on one leg at a time. They, have families that they care for. The stories we tell about ourselves and about the world in which we live get very weird, and very exclusionary. Because the minute we open our mouths, we separate the world into two, because you have to have subject and object to form a sentence. So you start out, so the minute we start talking is when we get into trouble. So this, that's my attraction to this practice, which is not for everybody. I'm not trying to convert anybody to this practice, but it starts with not talking and really quieting the discursive mind down so that you're not telling these stories and not contributing to this othering that takes place the minute we open our mouths. and just really accepting yourself, accepting yourself, you're the whole of your humanity. Now, dealing with the stories and the effects of the stories, that's where the work is. That's where the rubber hits the road, because you've ceased from your doing evil. Now you're doing something good for yourself by taking care of yourself with this sitting. The next step is do good for others. And then we have to be careful of what we're calling good and bad, and what we're excluding with those labels. All right. Again, we got off time and onto politics, but it's always a good discussion here. Any last comments from the Zoom?
I'm hoping that the word of the year will be the verb to other, and that people will become more aware of how they make people other.
Nice, David. Thank you. Thanks for that. Anything else in the room?